Hello, my marketing and entrepreneur friends. Welcome back to another exciting episode of the Let's Talk Marketing podcast. I am your host, Katya Allison. So, what have you gotten yourself into? Together, we are decoding marketing to make it accessible for everyone. Cut through the BS and get down to the nitty gritty. And in each episode, you will walk away with a nugget or an insight that you can bring into your professional and sometimes, dare I say, even your personal life. So stick around and take a listen to all of the knowledge bombs that are being dropped in every episode. And in this episode, I am joined by Jason Kramer, who is the founder of Cultivize, which is a consulting firm that specializes in B2B lead nurturing strategies and technology. With 15 years of experience running a creative agency, Jason has really helped well-known brands bridge the gap in their marketing and sales funnel. And today's episode is all about AI. And we get into the power of AI in business strategy and how it's changing the way we work. Jason shares insights on how to use AI strategically to improve your efficiency and scale your business without getting caught up in all of the hype of AI. Intentional prompting, automating what goes on repeat, and even analysis. We even get into how to approach AI if you're a little on the fence or maybe a little too scared to use it because it comes across more complicated than it is. AI has the potential to help businesses connect customer data with marketing campaigns and sales activities to drive results. So grab your favorite beverage, sit back, and let's dive into it. Let's talk marketing. Jason, welcome to the Let's Talk Marketing podcast. Very excited to have you on here today. We will be diving into one of my favorite topics, which is AI. And more specifically, we're going to really be diving into how AI can help us be more efficient. So welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Katya. Appreciate it. Well, happy to be here.
I would love for my guests to get to know you a little bit better. So let's start off with some really easy questions here.
Sure.
I'd love for you to share with everybody what your current role is.
Sure. So I am the founder of Cultivize, based in New York. And I've had this business for 6 years.
Very nice. And what do you love about what you do? But be prepared, with the good comes the bad. I want to know if there's anything that you don't like about your job. We all have something. So let's start with the positive. What is it that you love about what you currently do?
What I love is taking organizations that don't have a systematic way to nurture, track, and convert their leads and giving them a sustainable process that's repeatable and be able to pick up on those lost opportunities that typically fall through the cracks when they don't have a system in place. So they're spending a lot of time and money to generate leads and they're just kind of juggling, and balls are dropping everywhere. So it's really refreshing for me to be able to see just in a few months' time how much more organized and efficient we can make them through the work that we do with them.
Oh my gosh, you are preaching to the choir when you say that. I was literally having a conversation about that this morning already, about like being able to the health of our CRM, right? Because you're only as good as the information that you put into the system, and if you're not efficiently or effectively doing that, then how do you know these leads are even the right leads? We'll definitely dive into that. But like I said, with the good comes the bad. What, if anything, I have a magic wand, Jason. If I
Yep.
had my magic wand, what could I pluck out and magically take away from your day to day of your job?
What we can take away in terms of a positive or the negative? That's what was my question
You
was. So,
you take it wherever you're going to take it.
so I think that if you had something to take away, I think it's my ability to look at multiple aspects of a business and their problems, not just
Uh-huh.
on the sales side or the marketing side or operations, and figure out how to tie all those things together again to kind of solve these bigger issues that are, kind of strangling, if you will, the company, right, to really grow and to get over this hump. So I think that's my ability to kind of just sort of think of it like as a throwing out a 1,500 pieces of a puzzle on the
Yeah.
table. Like I'm able to see kind of like all those different pieces that kind of fit together and how to bring it all together.
That's what you like about it.
That's what I like about it.
But I want to know what I could pluck out.
What
Is
you can
it
pluck
how
out.
many pieces there
So
are
I
to
think
it?
they so what you can pluck out is the part where there's two pieces. One, people are habitually set in their behaviors. So getting
Mhm.
people to change behavior and to do something differently could be a challenge. Sometimes it's more than something I can, with my own powers, change. And I think it's also, you mentioned something, Katya, which is really important about like consistency of data. So like the
Yeah.
frustration where we can set somebody up for success, but they just keep just putting really garbage into their systems, and there's nothing we can do about that.
I'm really wishing I had that magic wand myself as well too at this point. So that's the good, bad, ugly where you're at now. I'd like to know how you stay up to date with the trends. Is there a podcast? Are you a book reader? Is there a newsletter? Are you just scroll on social media? Or do you have people kind of give you information so you're staying up to date with the trends? How do you stay up to date?
Yeah, it's a little bit all of the above minus the books. I found that
Okay. Not a
I,
reader.
I used to be a reader, but what I found is that, by the time books, especially now, sort of get into market, and this is sort of like a lot of, and I'm actually working on a book myself. So it's kind of like funny that I'm about to say what I'm about to say is that a lot of the books out there tend to have approaches that are a little bit old, right? Things are moving so quickly. And so, depending on what you're trying to read, I find myself reading more for entertainment value than for business and education value.
Yeah.
That being said, yeah, social media for sure. I mean, specifically, there's a lot of people I follow on LinkedIn. I do a lot of podcasts myself, but I also listen to a boatload of podcasts, and I
Mhm.
find a lot of great insights and nuggets there as well. And that's where I think I get most of my information. Is podcasts and just on social. But I think that the downfall also too, the one thing to add to that is you have to be mindful of kind of what's BS, what's real, and what also could apply for you.
Yeah.
There's so much out there that you could sort of get caught up in this sort of spider web of things that won't have any impact on you or your business or your life, but it sounds cool, and so you sort of go into that rabbit hole. And
Yeah.
I would say that you probably shouldn't, and kind of stay on the line of really what's going to make the most impact for you.
I call that kind of like riding the trend wave. Not all waves are meant for you, but I also think, you have to be really reflective as a business owner, as a marketer, as really anybody in business as to what what is valuable for you, like of that information. It may be trending, but if it doesn't affect you at the end of the day or affect your customers, right? Or what it is that you're doing strategically speaking, then it's kind of like one of these things that should just pass by.
Mhm.
And I'm right there with you as well too, from like business book perspective. I am a voracious reader, so I love to read business books. And some of them are dated, but others like still the foundation of certain things still ring true. And I always find that really fascinating. The things that, regardless of trends, like you still have to do, like, data health in your CRM and all of that stuff.
Oh,
Now let's
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, like Michael Malkovich's his book, Profit First. I don't know if you read that one, but that was like a great book where it's like
Mhm.
foundational and it's teaching about how to like, make your business more profitable. And so it doesn't matter if that book was written 10 years ago or 2 days ago, the foundation, and that's something
Yeah,
that actually made a huge impact on my business. So yes, I should have said that. Yes. As far as like the trend stuff, those things sometimes tend to get out of date, but the foundational books for sure are definitely helpful.
for sure. Well, let's dive into it. We're here to talk about just how we can leverage AI for efficiencies. Well, I like to focus on marketing, but I think it applies to everything. So,
Mhm.
what are some kind of common areas where you are seeing that AI can really make processes more efficient?
So there's one that, and this timing today, Katya, of this conversation is so like just on point. So
Love it.
I'm a very big component of LinkedIn. Not all of my clients are B2B, some are direct to consumer, but
Mhm.
I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn more than any other social platform. And as you may know, and listeners know, it's a time suck. I mean, if you really want to get in there and be integral in terms of bringing your opinion and your comments and your thoughts to people you follow, and to providing comments, and to doing all the things that make you what I would call an influencer, right, on LinkedIn. It takes a long time to do that. And it's like, I mean, you
Yeah.
spend 10 hours a week doing that, and you still may not even be to the point you need to be at. And who has time for that? And so, a tool that actually I know from a fellow colleague, somebody that I've known for a long time. Funny enough, I heard about his new product on a podcast that I was on. He was on after me, which is pretty cool. It's a tool called EvyAI. So it's EvyAI. And what it is, it's a tool specifically to make you a rock star on LinkedIn.
Nice.
Just to give you a quick example, you could go in and click a link, and there's in the last 24 hours, everybody that's posted something in your network where no one else has commented. So you could be the first one to provide a comment on everybody that you're connected with. You can also have different ways to filter out people that you want to follow and also provide comments. And so, what it is a way to use AI to not only create engaging comments on other people's posts and keep you top of mind, but there's also an idea generator. So, it helps you get inspired for creating your own content on LinkedIn. And it's just an amazing tool. And I'm like totally obsessed with it.
Well, I'm gonna have to check it
Yeah.
out after we're done chatting because I think LinkedIn is a really, you're right. I don't want to say time suck, but it is a time suck. I know that I will spend like on a weekend going through my messages because I like to reply to messages, but you're taking a look at everything that's going on. One of the things that I really like of what you said is the idea generator
Mhm.
because I think that a lot of people just see it as a form of posting. But when you can see how other people are engaging, especially in LinkedIn, because it is, I think, one of these platforms that is changing for a business, I can see it's trying to be a little bit more social. But I think like networking is always going to be the top game of LinkedIn when it comes down to it. So I like the use of AI in this example that you've given, making you more efficient in building out your personal brand and then giving you just kind of ideas for how to build and present yourself as your personal brand. And I think you
Mhm.
could use it for business as well too. Do you see the ties for being able to leverage it from a business perspective?
I do, and ultimately, right? Everybody says they're not selling, but everybody's selling, right? If you're
Yes.
in sales, I mean that's the bottom line, right? So even when I'm commenting, I'm trying to build influence for myself. But what's cool about the way that this tool works is that it uses both your what you build, your own persona, and the company persona for the company you work for,
Okay.
and so that it uses that in the natural language that it creates. So it might be an article about something, and it'll naturally weave in as a CRM consultant or in the world of CRM, we find this as it relates to what you're talking about. And so
Mhm.
it's not selling saying, hey, this is what I do. It's saying this is my experience and this is how it ties into what you're talking about. So in that respect, I think it's very helpful. But the one thing I will say about LinkedIn, it's completely oversaturated with a lot of like just garbage and automation, and so it is difficult, I think, to be extremely effective depending upon your business. Building real, authentic new connections that have some type of value. Either you can give value to them or they can give value to you. I get bombarded like with hundreds of invitation requests every day, practically, of people trying to sell me stuff that doesn't even relate to my business and what I do, right? And so
Yeah.
just going about it in a really bad way that leaves a bad taste in your mouth. But that causes a problem for people like me and you and your listeners who are trying to do the right thing and going about it the right way. And so it's sort of like, the one bad apple ruins it for the bunch kind of, scenario. So that's why I think you have to be even smarter and more strategic with LinkedIn to get past all that clutter.
Well, you bring up a really good point. I think, especially as it pertains to AI and really honestly being efficient, people are using it without being strategic and without thought, right? Like, hey, let me just push this button and it's going to do all of the things. There is a lot of thought that actually goes into how you leverage AI effectively versus just using it, right? I think that to me is the way that I see the difference. There's leveraging it and there is just, pressing play without any thought behind it. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I mean, I use ChatGPT all the time. I mean, it's And there's other tools I use out there. There's a new one that I've been testing called Orchestrate, which uses more of like neuroscience to kind of get through to people from that perspective messaging. But the point is that I don't just say to ChatGPT, "Hey, create an email campaign for me or newsletter." It's like I give it direction, but then I
Yeah.
also correct it. I make changes. I feed it and make it do what I'm looking for it to do, based on what my goals are. And so I think these tools are quite powerful. But to your point, you need to know what the prompts are. You need to know how to leverage the tool versus, for example, I mean, you hire a contractor to build you a house. If you don't tell them what kind of house you want, how many windows, how many floors, and all these things, and say just do whatever you want, you're probably not going to be happy with the result, right? Because it's not going to be what you're looking for. And I think that's kind of like a very sort of maybe silly, analogy, but I think that's the world of AI is that the tool is so easy to use, but it's like so many people don't know actually how to use it the right way.
I couldn't agree more. And I love your house analogy. For marketing, I'm always using like the building the house analogy, but I love that you leveraged is apparently my word today. That you're using it as it pertains to like AI as well too. You have to be a really strategic prompt engineer. And
Mhm.
I use AI in business all the time to be a little bit more just kind of efficient. And honestly, especially like when I work from home, and it's a little bit of a mate for me of like, we're going back and forth. Like, what do you think about these ideas? And it's really shaping things in a way. And I really do think it makes it more effective in that respect. But I'm curious, what are some of the most powerful outside of what we've talked about, the most powerful AI tools available that you see right now for marketers as it like relates to perhaps like CRM, data hygiene or email marketing? Like, what are the most powerful tools that we should be have our eye on?
It's a good question. Well, I mean, I think there are some tools that are even outside of AI. I mean, email hygiene, you mentioned, which I think is an extremely important topic, which a lot of people don't even know about or overlook. People are either buying lists, which there's some issues there and contention on how good the quality is of lists you purchase and the theories behind that. But even data you have from 5, 10 years ago is probably not good. And so companies are not even going through and cleaning those lists and doing a hygiene check on the email address. There's a great tool called Webula, Weula, which is one of the top companies out there that does email hygiene cleaning. That's something that Cultivize does too for clients, right? We'll take care of that process. And it's not about just cleaning the list, it's knowing about how to use the data that comes back and what to do with it. And that's really like, where we specialize. Um, the I don't really use too much AI out there, and I've tested a lot of it because a lot of it I found just doesn't really work, right? It's like there's so much startup AI out there that I've used it enough for a number of years that I can break those systems pretty quickly. And
Yeah.
then when I see like the results aren't coming back, I'm like, okay, is this tool really, you know, working to do what it's supposed to do? But here's an example tying into CRM. Just recently had a client who is a national based business. They were going to a part of Texas and they're like, hey, Jason, I'm going to be here. I want to try to find all the customers we have and prospects in this area. Is there a way to do it in the CRM? And I said to him, I said, no, Paul, there's not a way to do it directly in the CRM. I said, but we can export all that data out. We have your
Mhm.
zip code and the address of everybody you have in there. And we can put it even to ChatGPT and say, hey, build me a visual map of where everybody is in this area and plot out like a route for me so I can go visit these people. And so that's something where we can use again ChatGPT in a different way to process data. And I think that's really where, to me, not answering your question, but seeing the direction of where things are headed. I think AI processing data in CRM is really going to be the next evolution. You know, there's so many people, we talked earlier, that have so much information, whether it be in their CRM and a spreadsheet in their ERP system, whatever tools they have in QuickBooks, and they just really don't know how to use that data to their advantage or leverage it. And I think that's where machine learning and AI and look at the commercials right leading up to the Super Bowl right for AWS and how much they're doing to compute all these things for the National Football League right that they weren't able to do before. It took them so much longer to do but now they have this mass computing power to be able to spit out all this information that's, some of it's relevant, some of it's not. But the point is that it can handle the process data in a much more specific way than it could in the past. So I think, in a roundabout way, answer your question, I think AI is going to like leverage more in CRM as it relates the data you have, rather than like making something do something, right? That's
Yeah.
not already there. Another specific, really quick example: we do a lot of work on HubSpot. HubSpot has an AI tool they've been testing out that can predictively build out like workflows and lead nurturing cycles for you. So if you put some information in there, it'll recommend the triggers and the delays and all the different things you need to build out a workflow. Um, Time will tell how well that really works, but there's different things happening like that right now.
I really like the example that you gave from like a data analysis perspective, and you gave it from like a sales perspective. But as you were saying it, my mind went to, from a marketing perspective, events. If I'm planning a road show, to be able to, give AI the information of like, hey, here are my customers, give me a map of where I should create event road shows
Hmm.
where like there's a larger population, which to me is super exciting, and I'd love to be able to leverage it in that way. But it does also bring up this question of data security, right?
Hmm.
Especially from a chat GPT perspective, because it is an open AI. If I'm inputting all of that information, am I violating privacy laws of some sort? And I know that you're not a lawyer, so please, nobody take this as legal advice.
Yeah.
But do you know what I mean? Like, I think that there are some valid concerns when it comes to data that you're putting into an AI tool to ask it to analyze it.
Well, without a doubt. And even for this client, Paul, like we didn't suggest, hey, put in email addresses and customer names. We just said put in the physical location of your
Yeah.
customers, in a generic way, because that data does exist. If you go to Google Maps, the information about the name of the company, where they're located, is already public knowledge.
Yeah.
So we weren't, yeah. So I agree. You have to be careful of what you're uploading and putting in there, because yes, you're right. It is for public consumption.
Yeah, that to me is always the scary part. And I think it's one of the reasons that people kind of hesitate a little bit to embrace AI because of those kind of concerns. But there's also this like AI is going to take my job, right? Concern of like if I can just give it all of that information and it can do all of that stuff, how can I protect my job? What do you say to people who are hesitant to adopting or embracing AI as kind of a tool in their toolbox?
Well, I say to them, think about why you want to use it or what's keeping you back. One thing I always say over and over: software doesn't necessarily solve a problem. It can help, but it's the people that help have to come up with that strategy, right? To say, okay, what problem am I actually trying to solve? And
Yeah.
so, I think there certainly are people. I mean, look, copywriters, you don't hear about them as much anymore. They're still relevant. They're still important. Truth be told, I use ChatGPT to create a ton of content for our business. Now, that doesn't mean I take the content right out of there. There's still wordsmithing, there's still moving things around and changing things, but it cuts out, like 70% of the work to say, hey, I was on Katya's podcast. Here's this transcript, now created an article for me about our interview and our discussion. And so it's our conversations, our language that's being used to help drive that, but it's technology that's just doing all that synthesizing of information and putting
Yeah.
and packaging it all together, right? And so, but I think it also is, and this is kind of funny, right? So this isn't a quick story, but aside from everything, my wife, who's not in corporate or in business, she actually doesn't work, but we were talking about ChatGPT for a while, and she never used it, never really knew what it was. And she started kind of using it, and she uses it now for everything. And the most like funny, ridiculous things, like she like walks dogs, she's it's something she does. And so one of our clients wanted her to come by, and it was like last minute. She's like, I don't know how to like respond or whatever. And she used ChatGPT to like, write a message that didn't come across too harsh. I'm like, that's hilarious that you're using it for like these like things, or she like come up find recipes. I'm like,
Yeah.
she's like, oh, I found it on ChatGPT, and I'm like, I never thought of using ChatGPT to find recipes. It works better than Google, right? So you say these are my health restrictions. Like, try to find this dish, but I don't want it with cream. I don't want it with butter. How can it be modified? And ChatGPT does an awesome job at like giving you that information. So I think for the people that are scared for it, my recommendation is maybe use it for something on a personal side like that, right? Versus
Yeah.
business, and get comfortable with it to see really what it can do. So yeah, so I don't know. I think it's different for everybody, but it's something that is not shouldn't feel overwhelming, because it's a simple tool to use, but it's also could like draw you in easily too, right? Because
Yeah.
it's so easy. You could be like, you look up and you're like, oh man, I've been on this tool for 3 hours on this app, just
It's
playing
just going
around.
back
So,
and forth,
right?
going back
Yeah,
and forth.
yeah,
That's hilarious. I do think also one of the things that can be, my observation at least, one of the things that I think can be confusing for people who are trying to use AI is they use it like it's Google, but it's not Google. You know what
right.
I mean? Where like if you open up Google, you're searching for something. And I think that you're almost doing AI a disservice if you treat it like a search engine.
Yeah, I think yes and no. I mean, I would agree because we have clients that use AI, for example, like to. So here's a good one, right? So a lot of our clients are manufacturers and B2B businesses, and they're sometimes they struggle before they start working with us, or they try to internally create, like an email campaign, right, to go out to prospective clients. And it's all about like me, we, like here's what we do, and like right? And it's like marketing, 101, no, no, no. Like that's not what you do, right? And it should be about them and their problems and their, the solutions you have for them and how you've done it before and all these things, right? And so I find that ChatGPT specifically and some others are good where you can say, okay, like go on online, right? Look at our company, build out a persona for who we are, what makes us different than our competitors, find our top 10 competitors, what are their differences to us, right? And start building out like this a value proposition, if you will, right? And then once you have that profile, then you can say, okay, now reference this profile you built about what makes us so amazing and the problems we solve and who we do it for and the industries we do it. And now write my email campaign. And specifically, I'm going after like medical device companies. And I want my email campaign to show the problems they typically have in manufacturing, right, their products, and how my company solves those problems. And now you have something really compelling that's super specific. So I think in that respect, you could use AI to do a little bit of the research, but I
Yeah.
would yes, I would not argue, but I would say yes, you wouldn't use it in the same way that you would use Google to search for something else. Yeah,
Yeah, you can do so much more with it. And now I guess like Google has the um the AI feature as well too that aggregates all of that information at the top before you even get to the pages.
yeah.
Now, what is your advice for someone who does want to get started with AI to be more efficient? Where do we get started?
Well, I think the place to get started is to understand like what are you trying to do? Like, is it something that um, is a task related issue, meaning like you're doing something that's very manual, right? Like
Mhm.
you're taking all these spreadsheets and you're trying to synthesize information, or you're trying to, like I'll give you a quick example. Like a lot of times we specifically for the CRM work we do, data has to go in a very specific format, right? And so before AI, we'd have to like manually do that, work that file in say Excel, right, to put into the format we need. Now we could use some AI to say, okay, take this original file and here's the format it needs to be in. Please put it in this format, and within like 30 seconds, the format's done. So that's
Yeah.
something where if you're looking, if you have a job or a role where you have something that's very repetitive or mundane, or it takes a long time to do something like that, that I think would be a good place to start experimenting. I think if you're somebody that really has no clear objective of what you want to do, like think of something simple, right? Maybe it's something even about your business. Maybe start there where it's saying, okay, like create a persona for my business. Like, and here's a good one. We talk about marketing. I think that most businesses, I don't want to say most, I think a lot of businesses do a mediocre to fair job at really explaining what they do on their website, right?
Yes.
Um, and it's either outdated because things have changed, or it was never good to begin with, whatever the case may be. I think you could use something like ChatGPT to say, here's my website, go to my website and look at it and say, what do I do? Who do I serve? Right? How do I help people? What sets me apart from my competitors? Who are my competitors? And maybe that's just simple, asking those 4 or 5 prompts. And you might be really surprised to be like, oh, wow, like, this isn't so good, right?
Yeah.
You might also find that it's not also accurate. And here's an example. I was using ChatGPT over the weekend to really test out how well it's scraping LinkedIn. Okay.
Hmm.
And what I said to it was, I said, I want to reach out to agency owners that have more than 25 to 50 employees in the United States and in Canada, and I want you to compare what you find to my profile on LinkedIn to find out who's most likely to accept my invite when I reach out to them. And I knew I was going to get back like a short list of 25 people or so, which is
Yeah.
what I got back. But what it failed to do was it looked at my profile and it said, as a photographer specializing in commercial photography, right, which I don't do.
Which is not your
And I'm like,
occupation.
where did it even find that information? It says that nowhere in my profile. It's like, realize you say, okay, well, it really can't scrape LinkedIn like accurately, so I'm not even going to bother going any more forward. So,
Yeah.
you know, but I think that would be something where I think if a business owner is looking today, or maybe if it's even somebody looking for a new job, like, here's my resume, here's my work history, like, how could I stand out, for this position I'm applying for? Here's information about the job, please research the company, right? And tell me, how I can really sell myself. Like, it'd be a good way to kind of generate ideas, I think, for some of those scenarios.
It's a good tool to have in your tool bag, honestly. Now we've been talking a lot about ChatGPT, but are there other AI tools that you think like people should get a good start on?
You've asked me a couple of times. The reason I've skated around it, Katya, is because I really don't use that many, right? I found that ChatGPT
Yeah.
is really one of the ones that works really well. The other one I told you earlier was the EvyAI, which is specifically for LinkedIn, which I think is phenomenal. So there's no skin in the game for me to suggest that, but it's just a good tool, built by someone, that I know and respect. And he really thought of everything when building that tool. So those would be the two I would suggest, in this conversation.
Yeah, I think I like to make sure that there's no other hidden tool out there outside
Totally.
of that because I myself have tried several of them as well too, and I always go back to like a Chat GPT or an Any Word, right? Because I think that they all serve a specific purpose. I don't think that there's like a one size fits all. Like this is the only AI tool you'll ever need. I think
Yeah.
to me where I see the future of AI being more effective, not just for marketers, but for businesses, is AI getting more specific with the niche that they are in, right? Where like a chat GPT is great from like a general perspective. And you had mentioned the one that's really much more focused on LinkedIn. I think where AI is really going to win in the future is building out those niches so that they're really good at what it is that they do. But I'm curious if you feel the same way or if you see the AI trend going in a different way in the future.
No, I think there will be. I mean, there'll definitely be, in the beginning, I think it'll be more sort of generic, but, as the technology evolves, again, it's really behind I think the people behind the technology who are building it and using it. So, like, I can
Mhm.
see, AI playing a huge role, let's say, in the medical, community for, right now you get reminders, okay, your dentist appointment is in 2 days, and, and all these different things. But I think AI can play a role in helping automate a lot of like the follow up and automate a lot of the
Yeah.
messaging and things like that in specific industries. I mean, specifically, think about like we talked before about like building a house, but like the home construction industry and even like home services in general, whether you need an electrician or a plumber, they're notorious for not getting back to you. You're leaving a message, like
Mhm.
not showing up in time, or some issue just dealing with them. And it's so hard to find like local good contractors. I think over time, I think AI will really help those small, tiny businesses where they're, 1 to 10 people, 1 to 5 people, to, book appointments, to follow up on things, to get back to people in a way that's not complicated. Right now they
Yeah.
don't. They're and we work with a lot of those businesses too. A little bit larger. I mean, I'd say they're the $7 to $10 million range that are in a home service business. So they're not like one man, one truck.
Hmm.
They're 20 men, 15 trucks, um, but even them, they struggle with like how to leverage technology even at that
Yeah.
scale. So imagine somebody that's much smaller than them, and that's something that I think is really important to help, to your point, service, those niches with
Yeah.
AI is going to be a huge game changer.
Love that. I could talk AI all day with you. I've got one final question for you. And that's, if you knew then what you know now, what's the advice that you give to yourself?
So it's the same advice that, and I guess that's this question a lot, and not say it's a bad question, it's a good question, but your audience has not heard me answer it, so I'm happy to answer it. Um, I started my first business, which was a web development and boutique marketing agency back in
Mhm.
2002. Okay. This was before virtual agencies existed, before, really, it was either agencies or like freelancers pretty much, like there were no like in betweens back then. And so the advice that I would have given myself, I started my business because I was what they call a skillpreneur. I was a graphic designer. I was hustling on the side while working for full time at an ad agency, and I
Mhm.
decided to just start my own business and see if I could make it work. And so I figured out things as I went, right, and started to understand what profit margin was, and how to manage the books and how to do all these different things, right.
Yeah.
How to do sales. Like I wasn't a salesperson. Eventually, and it probably took me about like 4 or 5 years after running the business to start hiring a sales coach, hiring like a business advisor, hiring all these different people to help train me up to understand, like, am I doing anything wrong in the business? What could I be doing better? Had I known that from day one, I mean, my business would have definitely been a lot further along quicker than me trying to figure it out as I went along doing it on my own. And that's not because I was stubborn. I just didn't know things that were out there like business coaches and sales trainers, and like
Yeah.
back then it wasn't as relevant, and information wasn't as available as it is today. I mean, back when, I know it's like 20 years ago, but my point is that it's something that would have made a huge difference. So I think that's something that, put pride aside, would be my advice. And try to bring in people that are smarter than you, that know something that you're not an expert in, because I think they could bring really good value and advice to you.
I think that is great sound advice to give. Put pride aside and really, you're not alone, right? Like, if it can feel like you are, but you're not alone. Those are great, just kind of final words. Thank you so much for coming on here and just sharing your insights on how we can be more efficient and not afraid of AI. Thank you so much.
Welcome back. I hope that you found that episode just as insightful and interesting as I did. I'm ready to dive into my key takeaways. Key takeaway number one: prompt like a pro. AI needs your brain first. Now, what do I mean by that? If there's one thing we're not talking about enough with AI, it is that it is only as smart as the person using it. Crazy, right? AI is not some mind reading wizard. It needs good direction. The way you prompt it, the clarity of your goals, and how well you understand the problem you're solving, that is what determines whether it gives you gold or garbage. Think of AI like a GPS. If you don't plug in the destination, it can't get you anywhere useful. Research backs this up too. Prompt engineering is quickly becoming a skill set all on its own, especially in marketing. Tools like ChatGPT or others are incredibly powerful, but they need strategic prompting. Just like a designer needs a solid creative brief. Jason made a great comparison and used an analogy I love using with anything marketing. It's in regards to building a house, right? Think of it like hiring a contractor to build a house. If you don't tell them what kind of house you want and how many windows, how many floors, bathrooms, open concept, and the list goes on, you're probably not going to be happy with the results. You're basically asking this contractor to be a mind reader. And that's the same with AI. It's only as good as the information you put into it. If we want AI to be useful and helpful and create meaningful work, we need to stop treating it like a vending machine and start treating it like a partner. It's not just about using AI, it's about knowing how to talk to it. There we go. Prompt engineering. I'm off of that hill because that is the hill that I'm going to die on. I also have an episode where I dive into how to put together a really good prompt. There is a formula to it. So definitely listen back to a few episodes ago. Now, key takeaway number 2, save the brain power for strategy. Let AI handle the rest. One of the biggest misconceptions about AI is that it's all flash and no function, but some of the best use cases are incredibly unsexy and wildly efficient. It's not about asking AI to write your next viral post, although it can, maybe, but don't think of its primary use as that. It's about offloading the repetitive, kind of mind-numbing stuff so you can focus on strategy. Examples of these types of tasks are formatting data, writing LinkedIn comments maybe, or even generating summaries from transcript uploads. These are things that would normally take you like 30 to 60 minutes, but with AI, they can take you like 30 to 60 seconds. And the research checks out with this as well. McKinsey reports that marketers who adopt automation for these types of tasks see significant increases in both productivity and creative output. To me, the analogy that runs around in my brain, the analogy that runs around in my brain is it's equivalent to using a copy machine. Sure, you could handwrite every document, but that's a waste of your time when a machine can do it faster, cleaner, and more consistently. AI is the same way. It's not about cutting corners, it's about cutting out the time consuming stuff so you can focus on the work that actually moves the needle. And my final key takeaway, don't be a scaredy cat. Start with the small stuff when it comes to AI. Because let's be real, AI can feel intimidating. It's fast moving, it's always changing. And let's face it, sometimes the hype makes it sound like it's coming for our jobs. It's not. But I challenge you to start with something small if you're feeling hesitant about it. Jason shared what his wife does, but I think that it definitely is a great way to kind of dip your toes in. So use it to rewrite an email to sound more professional, or even plan a meal, or generate a blog post title. You don't need to launch your entire business on AI to begin learning how it works. In fact, research shows that AI adoption is more successful when users experiment first in low pressure environments. So generate gift ideas, create a shopping list, have it summarize an article for you. Or one thing that I love for it to do is to teach me something that I've been wanting to learn, for example, and maybe something that's a little bit more technically heavy. So I have it explained to me a technical subject in layman's terms so that I can really understand it. And better yet, I have it explain it to me. Wow, I apologize. I've been so tongue-tied in my key takeaway today. But my point is, I have it explained to me something very technical in not only layman's terms, but I also ask it to use it in an analogy. And I can even pick the analogy if the one that it gives me isn't working. It's a great way to break things down to help you understand. No risk, just curiosity and usefulness. That's how we get past the fear, not by diving into the deep end, but by getting comfortable in the shallow water first. Now, what did you take away from today's episode? I want to hear it. A very special thank you to my podcast editor, Johnny Ike, and thanks to you for spending your time with me today. Until next time, may the conversation flow, the laughter linger, and the outlook remain optimistic but grounded in reality. This is Katya, signing off.